Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about... What is this called? Justice League Throne of Atlantis. Stick around and find out. There's a flea on the fly and the hair on the wart on the frog and the bump on the log and the hole in the bottom of the sea. A flea on the fly and the hair on the wart on the frog and the bump on the log and the hole in the bottom of the sea. There's a hole in the bottom of the sea. And Aquaman lives right next to it, right? Or something? All right, let's see here. Darkness, mystery, legend. These are the whispers that echo through time regarding Atlantis. A kingdom long since forgotten to surface dwellers. It is here that a hidden empire teeters on the brink of war. When a military submarine traversing this remote domain is attacked, Cyborg plunges to the murky depths to investigate the wreckage. What he encounters is a threat powerful enough to rally together the newly formed Justice League. Meanwhile, thousands of feet above the ocean floor wanders the lone drifter Arthur Curry, a man with strange powers who may be the last chance to bridge the ancient Atlantean world and our own. Join Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and the rest of the Justice League as they face off against Orm. Otherworldly weapons and perilous odds. It's an all-new epic chapter from the DC Universe in which mankind's only hope from the darkness rests upon the guiding light of a man, Aquaman. All right, so... This is the second in kind of a pseudo, I guess, Justice League trilogy. The DC direct-to-video guys have, starting with, I believe, Justice League War, been creating a coherent DC animated continuity similar to the Marvel movies. And the Justice League movies have kind of been the pillars of that. They also did The Son of Batman, which I think might be in continuity, and the upcoming Batman vs. Robin, all part of this same continuity. Their plan is to do 3 movies a year, and 2 of those 3 be part of this newly established DC New 52-ish continuity. They said that they can that they'll be pulling stories from all over the DC universe, but they'll put the New 52 skin on it, as it were. So anyway, I read this story, The Throne of Atlantis, when it was originally in the Justice League comic book, the New 52 comic book, and I liked it. I thought it was fine. I'm also a big fan of the Justice League animated series, have been for a long time. I've got it all in DVD, and I've always wanted to see Aquaman really work and live up to his potential because he's got all that name recognition. So I just always long for him to be recognized and to be treated seriously, and I still don't think that DC's quite figured out how to do that in a way that's exciting for me. Jeff Johns certainly has done the best so far, in my opinion, in his run on Aquaman, but they still haven't taken it far enough. I think he needs a new power set. I think he should be like God of Water and be able to control water instead of just having Mara, his girlfriend, do that. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Is this movie any good? Well, let's see here. I think the weakest part is the first thing I'm going to talk about, and that's the story, the script, the pacing, the dialogue. It's written, the original story is written by Jeff Johns. Heath Corson is the name of the guy who wrote the screenplay for this and Justice League War, and the tone that he takes is, the dialogue is a little bit, gosh, how do I describe it? It's very superficial. The characters seem very superficial, and I felt that way about Justice League War, that they really weren't... I almost want to say juvenile, but the characters aren't necessarily juvenile. Now, Superman behaved very much like a juvenile high school jock in Justice League War. That was definitely toned down, and so I was grateful for that. And speaking of Justice League War, you don't need to have seen that movie, even though it's part of this newly established DC continuity. You don't need to see that. I might even recommend skipping that one and just going straight to this one, because I really just disliked Superman in that movie and had a few other issues with it. But anyway, I think that Superman was much improved upon, but they do continue the Superman and Wonder Woman romance and kind of step that forward a little bit in this movie, but it's kind of a side issue. And I think that's one of the big weaknesses of the script, is there's all these little beats and moments that they're trying to create with all these different characters. And if you're like a newcomer to DC Comics or to these movies, then you're going to feel like it's going to feel strange that they're having these little moments, One example would be the relationship between Superman and Wonder Woman, which really isn't connected to the main story. It's even thematically, it's not connected to the main story. It's just kind of this thing they're advancing. It feels very much like this kind of inserted B plot in a long form comic book arc, where you've got like a 4-issue arc that's this main story, but there's actually like a 12-issue B plot that in part is running through this. That's what the Superman Wonder Woman relationship feels like. It really has no relationship or bearing on the story at hand. Another example would be this random cameo by John Henry Irons, the guy who models his life after Superman, builds himself like an Iron Man knockoff armor, and he puts an S on his chest and he goes and becomes Steel, Well, he hasn't become Steel yet. He doesn't become Steel in this movie, but he's got this little cameo that's like... So there's these little bits of kind of strange fan service that don't help the story at hand. There's lots of little kind of like distractions and moments that aren't earned by being built toward in this story, or that they are just presented and then they go nowhere. They don't build toward anything else in the future. There's these just kind of like these weird little beats that I think fans will appreciate. The way that this story and script is written, it seems to be, if I were to guess, it seems to be aimed at teenagers who are really into the comics and New 52 right now. And they just want to see these heroes that they're excited about, these characters they're excited about, brought to life in a new way that they don't find in the comic books, But it's not in and of itself, I think, a really strong story or really strong exploration of these characters or development of any of these characters, which is a bit unfortunate. So, so that's what I think about the story and the script and the pacing. The performances are all good. Most of the same actors are coming back that were in Justice League War. There's Rosario Dawson is playing Wonder Woman this time instead of whoever they had before, but I didn't really even notice. It was actually another voice it was Jerry O'Connell, who is playing Shazam or Captain Marvel in this movie, and I can't remember if he played him in Justice League War, but it just seemed like a new voice. So there was a couple voice changes, or what, even if they weren't changes, that just seemed like, oh, was that the same voice or whatever, But I mean, they all do a fine job. But I would say that's the core cast. What I noticed in the peripheral cast, the characters that are just kind of like in this story, and they're not, Justice League members. Like the very first voices that you hear are these officers on a submarine, and then after that, some of the characters that live in Atlantis, the Queen and Orm and stuff like that. The way that they are acting, it seems like it has kind of a, I don't know, it's maybe a Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe, or it's just that the performances don't seem to be subtle at all. They're very kind of like basic choices. They don't. There's very little or no subtext in any of the delivery of these lines, and so as a result, combine that with the script, and you have just these very kind of superficial kind of characters. Whether you're talking about the peripheral characters, which I think is where you notice it the most, but even in the main characters as well, and that is in that case of the main ensemble cast, I think more a reflection of the writing than the actors performing. But there's probably a little bit to go around. Now, as far as like the visuals go, this is great animation. If you like the animation of the recent DC animated movies like Justice League War, or just the movies we've seen from them in the last 2 to 3 years, this is the same great quality that you've come to expect. So there's no disappointment there. The action is still cool and well choreographed and stuff. It's visually very nice looking, fun to watch. I enjoyed the visual exploration of just kind of the world of Atlantis, and the creatures and people that come from Atlantis. You might think Aquaman, okay, great, this is going to be a really boring story. But you got like these cool, like the undersea version of stormtroopers that are coming out, and they have this kind of organic looking armor, but then they've got these pulse rifles, and stuff. So there's some cool sci-fi action. In the same way that like Man of Steel was not just a Superman movie, it was a cool sci-fi movie in its own right. I think some of the same thing is happening in Justice League Throne of Atlantis, where yes, it's a movie about the Justice League, yes, it's a movie about Aquaman, but there's still just some cool sci-fi itches being scratched here that I really enjoyed. So I mean, if you're like me and you like the Justice League animated movies, and you just want to see more Justice League animation, and you're willing to fork out, the $20 or whatever, then I think that's what you're going to get here. Now, I have seen stories in the Justice League animated series that were stronger than this, and that had more character development and nicer earned character beats and stuff like that. So in terms of the writing, I've definitely seen Justice League story arcs and single episodes that were stronger than this. But I mean, if you're just like me and you're just like, Man, it sucks that the Justice League animated series isn't on the air anymore. I would really love some more Justice League. Then I think this will help scratch that itch. But I mean, if you're just more of a casual superhero fan, then this one might not be for you. Now, the music, I should comment on that a little bit. I didn't find the music very impactful to my enjoyment or my experience of the movie, but there is a 30-minute documentary on the Blu-ray that goes into how the score was made. And even if you don't really think this score is fantastic, if you're interested in just kind of like the behind the scenes of filmmaking in general, and you want like a 30-minute documentary on just what is involved in creating and recording a score for an animated movie or a feature film or something like that, I think you'll find this very interesting. There's also a 10-minute documentary about the villains of the world of Aquaman, although I really wish there would have been a documentary about the inception and origins of Aquaman as a character. We haven't seen that. One of the reasons that I buy these Blu-ray sets is for these behind-the-scenes features where they have talking heads and professors talking about, like, the psychological, backdrop of or foundations of these characters and their significance to pop culture and blah, 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 adding all this kind of validity to comic books and stuff. And I love those features. I love that behind-the-scenes stuff. And I really would have liked to see, like, a 20-minute feature on the origin of Aquaman as a character in comics, because they very often will do that when they are featuring a character for the first time in an animated DC movie. They'll have a documentary that's about the origin of that character in comic book publishing. And we didn't see that. We got a 10-minute documentary on the villains of Aquaman, which, they got into Aquaman's story and who he is a decent amount in that, but I really would have liked something a little bit more about him in the special features. There was also a nice 30-minute roughly video of the ComicCon, the New York ComicCon panel that was promoting this movie. And even again, if you watch this movie and feel like I did, like, all right, that was more Justice League. That was cool. But otherwise, we're thrilled about it or whatever. It's still interesting because you get some background information on how these movies are made. When they get to the Q&A section, which is after the first, I want to say, first half, the first 15 minutes, there's lots of great Q&A questions that will give you insight as to the choices they make and why they make them when they're making these DC animated movies in general, and kind of where they plan to go in the future and what kinds of things would be off limits. For example, one insight that I got is that the writer of this movie and and Justice League War, Keith, what is his name? Heath Corson, is a big fan of Justice League International and has been trying since day one to get a Justice League International animated movie made. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, because that kind of story, that kind of script would be this very surfacey treatment of characters that's very jokey and stuff like that. And I feel like that's probably going to be the strength of this writer. That seems to be what he brought to the Justice League War, and this one is this very kind of surfacey, just like, let's just throw out some punchlines, and which were mostly missed with me, but maybe hit for you. My sense of humor is a little bit skewed. Anyway, as far as Relevance goes, it's like I said, it's so surfacey in terms of themes, in terms of characterization. I highly doubt that this movie is going to trigger any worthwhile or significant thought or conversation about moral, philosophical, spiritual matters, any of that kind of thing. If you're a Justice League fan and you really want some more Justice League, then go for it. It's going to be $20. But if I were a time traveler and I were able to go back in time and talk to myself, I'd say, Pater, add this to your collection. It's got some decent bonus features and it's more animated Justice League, which you want to see. But wait about 6 months and get it used for like half the price. Add it to your collection eventually, but you don't need to get it right now. And again, that's speaking to myself as a specific fan of Justice League animated stuff, and I want pretty much all the Justice League animated stuff that they're going to put out. So if you're just a superhero fan in general, or just a DC superhero fan in general, but you're not like always chomping at the bit like I am for more animated Justice League, I think you can pass on this one. Final score, I give it it's rated PG-13 for sci-fi violence and action throughout. Final score, I give it a quality of 7.0 out of 10 and a relevance of 4.0 out of 10. Well, please do like, share, and subscribe. If you like this video and want to share it with some people and you want more videos like this, then like, sharing, and subscribing would really help me out. And then also, I hope you stop by ChristianGeekCentral.com and join some other geeks there as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.